I have a small presentation to make and just a few slides. Government and private. At the outset, let me clarify that I have been in the power sector for all along. I have been that in NTPC to start with, 13, 14 years. Power Grid Corporation, 13, 14 years, where the last assignment was I was the head of Northern Grid, NRLDC, and the NLDC before Mr. Suni and Agarwal took it over, and I moved to the private. So, first thing first, very difficult to speak after Mr. Chaudhary has spoken. It is a fierce speech and immediately followed by Mr. Sakti Sinha, who was restrained but is an excellent speaker. Now, what I'll do, I'm trying to take help of a picture here to say how balanced are we. In balancing, I'm trying to put the transmission, I don't know how clear it projects there. Transmission is the horizontal bar on the shoulder of that lever. And you see two bags, generation and distribution on either side. And the transmission guy in the country today is being asked to balance this. Now, it's not only not fair, this could lead you to trippings, brownouts, blackouts. And when it does take you to that situation of blackout, the first thing people look at is transmission wala kya kar raha tha? What was the system operator doing? Now the system operator and transmission put together are like this only, and this is the effect. The causes could be many. If you look at this, and they briefly touched upon, Mr. Chaudhary particularly looked at balancing in terms of financial health, in terms of a regulator looking at how to balance or balance of payment, as I can now term it. Now, technically, financially, commercially, they have to be balanced. Now, why this has become important is that you need to have growth of sub-transmission in a federal structure of electricity, in the governance that we have, to have the actual balance. That's not happening. For a given period of time, when you have a CAGR of 8.5% in ISTS, interstate transmission sector, so where your super grid is expanding at the rate of 8.5% CAGR, the state grids during the same time period have gone only 3.5. Now, this is more horrendous if you look at the last 2 decades. This is just about the best numbers that I have picked up. And this, while we try to give out a little input to the young minister who is very, very, determined, and starting from, he has brought in a, gush of fresh air. He thinks fresh. Most important I saw is that he asks the right questions. That has never been done, at least since the time that I have been in the power sector. I have seen that the questions that is asked to be replied and to be implemented are not the right ones. Now, this is something I felt I must, take acknowledgement of. And there, you see, this we have given out as an input, and it has gone out in form of a message that the states need to be geared up. There are many causes. You see, you can explain a murder, you can explain any act, any deed, but we need to hit out, we need to look at the causes and try to remove them in the first place. And T&D losses, as you know, in the country are very high. Now, these are numbers. We can skip this. Generation, we have some 5-year plans, and we envisaged a picture like this on the left side, ended up like this in terms of ownership. Transmission also, it has a 12th plan. It envisages 16,000 coming from the private sector. Now, I'll give you another effect, then we'll talk about the causes. This is what happened last week, and I have plotted this graph. This is fresh as 2 days. Now, what's happening in the competitive transmission field? Now, if you look at the blue towers, the number of qualified bidders that were put to competition, the actual price bids received were from the maroon towers, and the green curve is the price line. And that is in form of a percentage welcome sir, in form of percent levelized tariff as a percentage of the project cost. Now, if you see that, we have started with a close to 9%, and right now we are close to 17%. Now that speaks all about it. Decreasing participation in power transmission sector. Well, let's look at the possible causes as I see it. I mean, you might see many reasons, or you might not agree with me. What we have seen that horrendous amount of delay in the process that leads to award. Now, in bidding process, the guidelines envisage 240 days. The average number of days taken by the BPC so far is 442 days. Improvement seen in last few bids, but no relief given to the successful bidders earlier. Now, the NEP, the 12th plan, National Electric Plan, that is something which has taken into consideration this line. I quote from there. While selecting the transmission projects for competitive bidding, the lead time requirement of about 1 year for completing the bidding process has to be kept in view. But this has gone on to a much longer period than 1 year. Now, some issues, right of way. Section 164, now, even as the CTU, STU are the deemed licensees, and therefore they are the deemed holders of 164, or they have been perennially, I can say, apart, authorized under 164 to use the Telegraph Act for each element of transmission line that a private builder or a player through the competitive field, competitive route has to execute, will have to be singularly got cleared from the Ministry of Power, and it has to be signed by the Cabinet Minister. Now, this has been taking a long time, and it has paralyzed a few projects, including 2 of our projects. So that's something I thought we must share. ROW. Now, this is catching on. NIMBY, as you know, not in my backyard, is something our countrymen they have learned. There are emergence of green groups who do the right noises at wrong times. And after all, then we have our own little Indian system of Benami holdings of land. And as you approach for putting a tower in a piece of land, you get to the 17th person as the actual holder of the land. And finally, you see that there is a minister somewhere sitting in Delhi or in a state capital. He is finally the holder. And the last Kisan says that, don't talk to me. Do I talk to the minister? No, don't. Simply don't talk. Get away. Go away from this thing. So this NIMBY thing has really been causing a lot of harassment to all the transmission players, including Power Grid. I must say, Power Grid, to be on record, I do not know if there are people from Power Grid here, they can certify for it. Power Grid could not terminate 2 of its lines in their own designated substation and had to short terminate it somewhere else just because ROW was available on that substation, for that substation, and for the former one they could not penetrate the area. But that is the kind of situation that has come out, and therefore the costing or to be able to predict as to how much you need to spend on ROW on a given section, it has become a terrible task. And with passage of time, not only with habitation growing, you might have emergence of all kinds of things, including Maoist in some areas where you have done a route survey and taken a line routing, only to find out that the line has to be rerouted and it would be probably longer and take much more time to construct. And escalation to district courts, high courts, and extortion, money. The amount of money that we are paying around Pune to enter the Talegaon substation is horrific. Not only for footing of tar, the land which is physically under the strung line. So the line is, let's say, 35 feet above ground, minimum. And now down below, all activity can go on. But the land holders there, the farmers, they do protest. And we are paying up to, I hope this doesn't create a cascade. We are paying close to about 2 to 5 lakhs of rupees for 200 meters of line portion, 300 meters of line portion. In spite of that, the two long lines, which are close to about 1,000 circuit kilometer, are falling short of 9 tower locations to enter the substation, and we are held up since last 5 months. So ROW has become a nuisance by itself. So I do not know whether a change of law will do or enactment of the law by use of the local police or depoliticizing the issue would help, but we need help. And then, of course, environmental clearance is something which in all sectors, whereas in tariff-based, after having committed a particular tariff, you need to have these things looked at, and they are variable in nature. And now, in technology, we will not discuss this much at this forum. You know that competition by itself will bring in a technology upgrade. That's true in all sectors that have been opened up. So technology upgradation is an automatic process the moment the sector is opened up. Now, I thought before concluding, I must bring to the House something. It's not funny. It's not that Mr. Chaudhary says that we should not compare with China. I am not comparing. I'm only trying to take off from where Mr. Partha Sarathi yesterday left. Chaudhary Saab was not around here yesterday. Mr. G. Partha Sarathi, our ambassador, he was talking about what is that the Chinese are doing in form of laying infrastructure within their country, all right, they are known for it. But what is that they have been able to do outside their country, and what is the ultimate and ulterior motive? So in that he quoted about pipelines, everything. He talked about security situation in India and marching of soldiers, etc. Now, in electricity, let's see what is it. This is I have copied a slide. This is in public domain, so I felt free to pick it up. This was for the first time in SIGRE. SIGRE is the apex platform of practicing engineers, electrical engineers for large interconnected grids in the world. It happens every 2 years, typically every even year at Paris. This time, last year, it was opened by the Chinese president of the State Grid Corporation of China. And whereas earlier I have seen the Chinese to be the backbenchers, used to take a few notes and go away quietly, typically half a dozen in a gathering of 3,500. This time they were on forefront, at least about 100 people, 50 of them guarding their president, and in an undisclosed PowerPoint, he came to the stage and presented something of which I have just taken 4 slides. He says that in times to come, the world is going to look like this. And the curves are in front of you: oil, coal, gas, hydro, nuclear, renewable. Now, looking at this, based on this, what he has gone on to offer is, of course, with high technology and huge power carrying capability over long distances with high voltage in terms of 10,000 megawatts per line. He has gone on to show these 3 slides. He is talking about a 5,500 kilometer line in Mongolia region to Poland. Option 2, a 4,700 kilometers, again to Germany, and again another 4,500 kilometers, plus 2,000 kilometers to Germany, Berlin. Now, what is he trying to say is not the capability in transmission. He was candid in mentioning that please don't bother about transmission as to how I do it. Bother about what I am going to do to your power situation in Europe. At whatever rate you are paying, domestic and industrial electricity tariff, is going to cost you close to half of what you are paying. And that's inclusive of transmission charges. It was mind-boggling and eye-opening. SIGDE generally has been a technical, assembly of practicing engineers talking about technical things. He came and he disturbed the whole setting. I saw the next 4 days people getting into small groups discussing about, is this feasible? Is this practical? What are we doing here? Why do we talk about small things about this is saving money in pennies and a few dollars, etc., etc. And then a few meters from there in Paris, the same week, there was a European group who were taking a meeting about dumping of solar panels by China in Europe, and they put an anti-dumping duty of close to 32%, in spite of which it has not stopped, because even paying 32% anti-dumping duty, it's cheap. Now, why I mentioned this is that transmission is going to copy or originality. I'm not mentioning that, sorry. Transmission is going to leap forward in terms of carrying capacity, in terms of distance, and in terms of control. It will be digital grade control in hundreds of megawatts to thousands of megawatts being controlled by small centers, by mobiles, as all of us know, right from banking to closure of a circuit breaker or any command. The communication is going to be the weapon. So that being the fact, and the transmission being, it's going to get only thicker and bigger in carrying capacity, we need to do a few things in form of governance of the sector, in form of facilitating good economics, good technology in the sector. And with that, this is my last slide. The subgroup on transmission, of which I was a part, a member, we made a recommendation to the minister, and the minister has been kind enough to accept it. And in that, GNA is something which Chaudhary Sahab and Sinha Sahab touched upon. It will be done elaborately by Mr. Srivastava. So that's one thing where you not only declare your connectivity requirement, you pay for it and pay for the, you stand guarantee for the number, megawatt number. So that's something. The private players' problem, the dilemma was also taken to the fore, and that was accepted. It's appearing there. Basin-wise development in hydroelectric power of northeastern region is something which actually got to his notice, and a lot of work has been done on that, and sensitizing the states and transmission planning in form of a composite exercise between center and state. Thank you so much.